in those days, but we have a historian right here in the studio. He will help us go way back to what happened and what we have in a present day society. So right here in the studio this morning, we have Dr. Ikenna Odife. He's a lecturer at the Department of History in Nnamdi Azikiwe University, Awka. You're welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
We also have Hope Nkiruka Okoye. She is the Executive Director, Intercom Africa. Good morning.
Good morning, all.
And Dr. Chidozie Nwafo, Deputy Director, Center for Migration Studies in Nnamdi Azikiwe University. Okay, you're also welcome.
Welcome to this program.
All right. You know, the enslavement of Africa during the transatlantic slave trade tore millions of people apart and again away from their family. It actually deprived them of their human rights and left a trauma spanning from generation to generation. So that's why we're here today, to talk about the topic and see the kind of things that are happening today that we can also categorize as modern day slavery. But before we do that, let's quickly start with a historian in the studio this morning. Let's trace it way back to what happened, what slave trade was all about and how it even started. And then, just so for people that are listening, watching us this morning to understand what happened, how it started, and what has been done so far to abolish that.
Thank you very much, moderator. I would want to begin by stating clearly that slavery and slave trade, which is the trade on humans for purposes of slavery, is one of great antiquity. One cannot pinpoint with any exactitude the year or the period in time which it started. But I would want to add that, I want to state that since our focus is on the transatlantic slave trade, it is important we try to derive it from the point of the European explorations into the New World. The founding of the Americas led to establishment of plantations, and there was need to have people engage labor in the plantations. Initially, Europeans were engaged in the plantations in the New World, but it was discovered that they died in droves. So recourse was made to Africa, and luckily, Africans were found to be very resilient to weather conditions. They survived very well. So since they survived well, they were acquired or procured in large numbers to work in the plantations in the New World. What is interesting about the slave trade is that it involved the Africans who got the slaves from the hinterland, the coastal or littoral middlemen, and then the European slave ships. So you see that it is a wave involving three groups. And as at the time they did it, they were carrying it, they didn't see any evil in the practice. For instance, one of the proponents of acquiring slaves for work in the plantation was one pastor, De Callas. De Callas was the one who suggested that Africans should be brought to work in those plantations. However, within his lifetime, he had cause to condemn the slave trade because of the inhuman treatment meted out to the slaves. So when we look at slave trade, we think of how the slaves were procured. There are wide areas, wide theories and on how the slaves were acquired. Some people said that slaves were procured through warfare, through kidnapping, and sometimes people or group could collectively do away with undeserving characters. So you notice that there are so many ways which slaves were acquired. Sometimes too, people voluntarily sold off their relatives in times of economic hardship. So you see that it is not something you could give a linear or literal description. It is multifaceted. So when the slaves were acquired, they were moved under very inhuman conditions to the coastal states, where the coastal middlemen held them and eventually sold those slaves to Europeans. In fact, what their fate was at the plantation is better imagined than described. So let me stop at that.
Stop at that. Okay. You're smiling there, Dr. Chidozie. You have more to add on the history. Way back, what happened then? You know, and I know there was a time we were talking about abolishment of slavery and all that, but we still get to that to talk about whether it has been abolished and what we have in our present day society. That's the modern type of slavery now, which some people are not even aware of. You understand? So let's quickly trace it back. Do you still have anything to add to that?
Well,
what happened?
Dr. Odife have stated it all. It's a web that involves many people, the direct people, the middlemen, and the slave hustlers that come to Africa. So, but in all these things, there is this human factor, okay? There is victims, okay? And the victims, like you say, pass through untold hardship and experiences. And I think when it persists, some people begin to look at the humanity part of what they are doing and eventually led to the said and the signed abolishment of slave trade as a moral way of life and labor in US and Europe, where they are so too. I think the humanity part is very, very important. That's what I want to add for now.
All right, Nkiri, let's come to you, talking about the effect or the impact of slavery on the people, on the slaves themselves. Let's discuss that.
You know, when we talk about the impact of the impact on the slaves, that's the victims we're talking about,
yes.
Because we're looking at the victims of slavery
trade, yes.
and the transatlantic slave trade, the trade, the business itself. How my brothers had actually talked about the inhuman, that is the human rights violation and the inhuman treatment. It was a degrading situation, dehumanizing situation when we look at what they actually went through. And unfortunately, such thing is still even existing. But let's just look at exactly what happened during that period. These people were treated even worse than animals. The way they were being forcefully, because it's a forceful migration, the way they were forcefully being taken away, the way they were packed, you know, even the way they were treated, like when, you know, if you look at even the people that these herdsmen that, you know, when they move their sheep and cows, the way they even treat them, they still, but the way the women and children, the men were treated under chains and shackles, under hunger, you know, and you know, force them to trek long distances. When they pack them in the ship, they pack them like sardine. The ship that will finally convert them through the Atlantic. And the way they were forcefully, the women are being raped, the way the men are being, you know, the way they were being beaten, the way they are being tortured, at the end, getting to the end, because the Europe will buy the Africans, sell, you know, took them as slaves, sell them to the Americans. They use them in their plantations, and because they are someone's property, they had to label them as when you buy your goods. When you buy people that sell yam today, you see marker pen, you know, they were using their initials to number their goods for them to indicate. That is the way they were actually branding men and women and children. You see them separate before you. They will take a child and sold to somebody else, sold a wife to another person, sold the husband to another person. You know, place them. People will bid, and the highest bidder will take. They will look at is this one very strong enough to give us what we want? At the end, they will use hot iron, use their initiative, and press a mark. This is, if it's John, this is for John. So if that slave tried to run, they will catch him, torture him, and still return him back to John. It's John's property. He can use him and dispose him at. And the worst thing is that there are some of these things. When you look at some of the, like when you watch 12 Years a Slave, or you watch The Roots, you can see some of how the inhuman treatment they went through. Some of them that were working in sugarcane plantation, they gagged their mouth. If you understand what I mean by gagging, you know, if you see these dogs that are very fierce, they gag their mouth. Mm-hmm. If you see kura, they gag this one, they use chain, iron, to gag human's mouth. You walk in this plantain, you cannot even test it, because even with the resilience, it was a forced labor. That's the level of forced labor they were subjected to. They raped the women at a point, they forced them into breeding slaves. I don't know, it's uncountable. It's uncountable. Even sometimes they take the children, the ones, and put in a cage, and the Oyibo child will be watching that, seeing an African as not a human being, as a substandard or half human being, and they were treated. It's traceable to racism. It's like they were looking at Africans as if we are not human beings. There is a lot of impact. It's like the trauma. A lot of the development of Africa is also on the development of Africa is also traceable to the slave trade. When you look at the impact, is enormous. It affected us in many ways, economically, psychologically. Some of the families never recovered as a result of. And we look at the generations, the effects on generations of Africa from. So I don't know where to start and where to end. It's enormous, it's degrading, it's inhuman, it's dehumanized. Whatever language you can use, is something that we don't, each time we talk about it, is something that it's so horrible.
Yeah, from how you are even explaining the whole thing, it shows that you don't, watching all those movies then, sometimes I can't even watch them, because looking at what happened, you'll be wondering, did this actually happen then? But then again, we're talking about abolishing slave trade and as modern slavery, as it escalates. Let's talk about what we have now, what we can describe as modern day slavery.
Well, we accept that the slave trade was abolished. It was not abolished out of humanitarian instinct. It was abolished basically because of the economic developments in Europe and Americas at that time. In fact, it was the Industrial Revolution that ushered in the zeal to abolish slave trade, because such humans who were engaged, human labor was no longer attractive. With the development of machines for production, humans were no longer needed. So it was then that people began to condemn the humanitarians. We want to see those. Why we question, why did that humanitarian instinct begin to rise after more than 200 years of practice? Right. There were Christians who sold the slaves, who engaged in this slave trade. They read the Bible, they know about humans. So the abolition of slave trade was predicated on economic developments. The humanitarian instinct so mentioned is mere camouflage for the real abolition. However, when we look at what is happening today, it's rather unfortunate that people willingly submit themselves to slavery. That is self-indentured slavery. You have it in different forms: the current japa, the brain drain, the visa lottery that is developed by America and Canada, the immigration policies which allow Africans into Europe. These are part of what we describe as modern day slavery, because those people come there to render services. However, the difference between the slavery now and the slavery then is that the humans, the slaves of today, are no longer properties of their owners. They are individuals who willingly submitted themselves to migrate to America and Europe. It is important to state that the motivating factor for the immigration into these America and Britain, especially from Africa, is born out of misrule, bad governance that characterize the leadership of African states. If things were comfortable, people had good livelihood, the urge to travel out for whatever reason will be reduced. That is on one part. We will, however, not fail to lose sight of the fact that there is a network of slavers now. People who stealthily, under different ploys, engage girls to go to Italy. That is a form of slavery. It's a sex slavery. Now, when you listen to the radio and watch the television, you see Nigerians trying to move to Europe via the Atlantic. You know the hardship. Most of them die in course of crossing the desert. Most of them also die in course of crossing the Mediterranean in overloaded boats. So we see that these things are born out of personal human volition, not any form of compulsion. So what is the problem? What is the cause? Should we now attribute it to the white man? It is purely the making of our leaders, the failure of the leadership of the states of Africa to provide the basic necessities for the citizens, compel them to seek for lucre outside the territories or the confines of the African continent. Even when you look at it, there is even internal migration, migration within Africa. Better economies in Africa pull people. Professors in Nigerian universities are wont to seek for opportunities in Burundi, opportunities in South Africa, where the pay is far much better, and for a better livelihood. So you look at it, it is a motley of factors that shape the modern day slavery.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, since this is about International Day of Remembrance of victims of slavery and the transatlantic slave trade, I mean, the theme for this year's commemoration is Fighting Slavery's Legacy of Racism through Transformative Education. Now, with this theme, because just like you said, I don't see this as what it's going to end so soon because of some of the factors that are contributing for this immigration we are looking at. But then how can we use this theme, the theme for this year, to at least to reduce to the barest minimum the kind of slave trade that we are experiencing today? Of course, some are self-induced. Nobody's forcing, nobody's coercing anybody to move from his or her country to another country.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that. You know, just like Dr. Ikena rightly said, every human being has the right to migrate.
Sure.
Migration is also sisi nunage it's the only tree that have that they will cut it down and stay stand. So, but human beings, once they see that they can move to a place where they can have a better life, they are bound to move. But then, with the abolishment of slave trade and the subsequent things that happened during the Second World War, I think by 1948, there is this Universal Fundamental Human Rights Declaration. And if you look at the Article 4 of that, it speaks strongly against any form of slavery which involve forced labor, okay? And generally, the Universal Human Rights Declaration gives everybody equal right to move anywhere he likes, to stay and work comfortably there without any prejudice. But again, in Nigeria, because once we talk about this modern day slavery, it's focused more on forced labor, child abuse or child labor, trafficking, human trafficking, which will eventually lead to forced labor, whether it's for sex or for working in plantations in Europe, or working without being paid, or working under dehumanizing conditions. Okay? So there is this universal or national understanding from United Nations that every human being must be treated with dignity. Now, Nigeria, as we know, is one of the countries in sub-Saharan Africa that supply most of the people that try to travel either through the desert, through the Mediterranean Sea, or anywhere. But then, the important thing is this: Nigeria have also adopted the ILO, this Human Rights Declaration in 1998, and it has been reversed again, reviewed in 2000, and that's just last year it was reviewed. Okay, this makes every man have the fundamental human right to travel anywhere in the world and walk with dignity and respect without prejudice. The problem is this: most of the people that actually travel, do they understand this right? Do they know how to implement their rights or fight for their rights wherever you are in the world? But then, you know, there are some hindrances to this right. What is the route the person used to travel? Okay? Is it a regular route or is it an irregular route? Okay? If you migrate regularly, that is with legal documents, okay? This IOM have made this, what they call GC, what's it called? Global Compact, that every human being has the right to migrate safe, orderly, and regularly. So once you know that you migrate safely, orderly, and regularly, you can now have the right to claim your human rights. Even if you migrate irregularly, you still have that human right restored. So one of the things we can do this year with this team is to try and sensitize people, the intending migrants who want to go internationally. It's not a crime to want to go to Dubai or Oman or Qatar or Europe to work, okay? But they have to be indicated that they have certain rights, okay? And where they will go if they feel that their rights is violated. And once you go to the right authority, even if you migrate through irregular means, authorities in the world will somehow make it known or put their mouth there to make sure that your rights is restored. I think sensitization is the key thing. Okay. From juvenile, secondary school, traders, everybody should know their rights. Sometime in India, the Indians begin to violate the Nigerians' rights working there. So all of them gathered the same. Most of them are staying irregularly, but they still went to the embassy and protest that their right is being violated. And with this bilateral understanding with Nigeria and India, I think that was resolved. They packed almost more than 5,000 Nigeria in the airport, wanted to deport them. Most of them still have their papers, but when they demonstrated for their rights, it was resolved.
Just like you said, some people enter some country illegally, so they wouldn't want to come out. Even when they are being mistreated, they wouldn't want to come out because they don't want to get deported at the end of the day. Well, let's come back to you, Oho. I mean, I know you are passionate about this topic we are discussing today. So I want to talk about the aspect of the forced labor. Now, taking some girls, you know, people out of the country forcefully or deceitfully, telling them you are going to secure a job for them, only for them to get there and understand that what you brought them there to do is prostitution and all that. Let's talk about all those cartels that come together to, you know, take these girls unknowingly to other countries. I mean, how does it work? And what have we done so far to say that this particular, should I call it business? Because it's a business to them. And they will make some of them swear to one oath or the other that when you get there, you're not going to say anything against them and all that. So let's know how it is happening.
Okay. I want to look at, when we talked about slave trade, you remember we are looking at transatlantic slave trade. It was also called slave traffic. Okay. It's actually trade in human beings. And the same trade in human beings, where human beings is the product to be sold and to be bought. And there is ownership. Then it was like there is a law or whatever backing it, or that it was like a legal thing for them to do. So when we talk about the abolition, it's like also like reversing the law, taking away their right to acquire humans as property. And today we are talking about the modern day slavery, which is human trafficking, trade in human being. And this trade can occur in many ways. If you look at the old slavery and today's slavery, there is nothing much different from them. Apart from that, they have the legal backing, the legal rights to do it. But now, there is no legal backing for you to trade. So, but because the economic benefit, we're talking of billions of dollars business here. If you look at armed trafficking, if you look at drug trafficking, if you look at human trafficking, these three businesses, there is a transnational organized business with billions of dollars involved. So because of the economic benefit, people, whether you abolish it or not, people are still trading in humans. And it involves procuring. This procurement, you can do it by many ways. It could be by deception. So you procure, you transport, you move. Somebody is there to acquire, to buy, or to receive, or to harbor. So this is the act. The means you use, it could be through coercion, it could be through deception, it could be through abduction, kidnapping, forcefully, or even taking advantage of vulnerability of position of the victim, or even position of authority of the person who is doing that. And the sole aim, the purpose, is exploitation. This economic value, whether material or financial value attached to it. So this is, it could be for different purposes, but the sole purpose there is exploitation, which happened prior now. And these people will still buy. When you look at the human trafficking, you have mentioned there is aspect of the sex slavery, forced prostitution, there is aspect of forced labor, there is aspect of even for organ harvesting. There is a lot of different purposes and different aspects of this trafficking we're talking about. So when we look at the aspect of the girls that are being deceived, I'm not looking at only at the girls, I'm also looking at the men too, because we from this end, most of our young men are victims of modern day slavery today. And their own is even that they willingly, ignorantly sell their father's land, sell all their properties, borrow money with the hope is greener over there. We have the right to do, but people who are these human merchants, who are these in this trade in human being, they will lure you, they will tell you there are opportunities, that they have agents, they have connections, you can pay, they will just smuggle you. We are looking at the irregular aspect. They will, yes, you may not get visa, but we can facilitate. We have connection. You can follow this country, enter this African country. That's why we talk about thousands wasting in the desert. And those that survive the desert, the Mediterranean Sea is waiting for them again. So for them that even manage to enter Europe with the hope that immediately you cross, you enter, you begin to pack the gold on the streets of Europe, which is very far from reality. When these people finally recruit from here, there is someone somewhere ready to facilitate the movement. And when they facilitate, there is somebody somewhere ready to receive. And there's somebody somewhere ready to buy and now subject them. So these young men, when they pay with their money, we call them, that one is smuggling of human beings. We call them human smugglers. And traffickers, they are not, two of them work together. It's a cartel, it's a syndicate, it's a transnational organized crime form of business. Okay. So what they will do now is that these people, when they, along the line, they will be like stranded on the road. When they are stranded, they are the mercies of these traffickers. You see the young men with all the hope that when they get there, they are free. They are not free. Some of them are being subjected to hard labor without pay. And this is the modern day slavery. They use them in these plantations, or they use them in construction and factories. If you see what they are subjected to, and even the level of the same inhuman treatment that people went through during this slavery period, people are still going through it. For the young girls, they promise you job. When they get there, madam is ready to buy you, and madam will tell you how much. And when they were leaving, they will tell you, don't worry, we'll help you. But you will swear an oath that when you get there, you work, you pay us back our money. Innocently, you will be like, I'm ready to go and work, I will pay. You will swear. But when you get there, you find out that a table has turned. It's not what you have. That was why UN said, when it comes to human trafficking and smuggling of migrants, especially human trafficking, consent is irrelevant. That is, there is nothing like consent. Because if I as a woman had given you the consent that if you take me to Europe, I will work and pay you back your expenses with the hope that I'm actually going to. Sometimes I might even be doing a very good, I might even be a painter, I might even be a model, I may even be into hairdressing business. I was going there with the hope that this is what I was going to go and do, use my skills, make money and pay you back. Only for you to bring me to Europe and said, I will also see there is no business for me here. You will now lock me in a room and bring as much as 50 men to sleep with me in a day. Is there anything like consent again? When I refuse, you will chain me, you will force me. So when we talk about the modern day slavery, I actually want to end it here and tell you what I want us to do. We are talking of education. Education as the topic for this.
We'll still get to that, what we do to, at least stop this. But we need to get people's opinion on what we are discussing, because we actually interviewed some people and we want to hear what they have to say about this modern day slavery. Let's hear from them.
Because when we get to
some small children, when they are engaged in some domestic services or whatever, sometimes the people that they are with mishandle them. It can be abolished when you say that before you hand your child to somebody, you should be able to know whether the person you are handling, the person you can take proper care of that person. And the government can also play some role. Government should make a policy where children within some age should have the right to be in school. Maybe they should give people free education. Because what makes people to give their children out is maybe because they are unable to take care of. But if government can assist, at least before a child can go to be a domestic help to people, they must have passed the age of, they must have reached a certain age that they can be able to do certain things themselves.
When you know you don't have a stable work or something that can take care of you, why not produce just two? With that, than producing 5, 6, 7. And that will make them at a point, so we run out of the house. So it will even create a level of criminality in society. When a child is being raised in the street, what do you expect of that child that doesn't go to school? And most parents will take them to a place that is not even, maybe where they can stay and serve and go to school, and if they are maltreated or not, they don't even know. It is actually part of it, but those hawking, it is not their will to hawk. Probably their parents must have taken them to their auntie's house or somewhere for where they can help the house, like help the younger ones of that family. Thereby, instead of those home to take the person to school, they will either put them into hawking, forgetting they came to study and equally help the house.
Yeah, because of
the economic hardship. Parents who cannot take much, who cannot take proper care of their children, do, kind of sending them out to guardians, relatives, that will help them take care of the children. At the end of the day, we find out that those children are very much suffering where they are. Okay? So to me, it's kind of giving them advice. Everybody should cut down on much that is giving birth to children. They should cut down on that. Let that be family planning kind of.
Come back to the show. We've heard what the people out there have to say. I think they are concentrating more on what is happening within. That's the
internal trafficking.
yes, internal trafficking. I mean, how it happens. One of them mentioned you having given birth to the number of children you can actually take care of at the end of the day, because that is the major reason why you see some people giving out their children and they don't really care about what happens there. I've seen a situation whereby the lady even called the mom that they are maltreating me, they are doing something. The mom said, you won't even come back. So just anything you have to do, you just have to do it and stay there. So this particular issue, we are talking about the transatlantic, but let's also figure this one out. This, yes, internal trafficking, how it happens right here in the Nigeria. Of course, we've known the cause of that and all that, but how else can we also curb this one?
Okay, this is, we call it, some of them are domestic servitude. It could be child labor, it could be domestic servitude. Domestic servitude could be a child, could be an adult. It depends. It's because people don't have more than the number of children, and with the bad governance as the main root cause of the whole thing. The poverty, people cannot take care of or even, and people are also taking advantage of that. There are people that their business today is go to the communities, get these children, and tell their parents that somebody in the city is ready to train this child to any level of education just for the child to live with them. And their own business, they will take these children, go and give it out to these people, and they'll be collecting money. This child will end up not even going to school. If it's the one that they will be paying the person who brought the child. The parents will be there once in a while. They may buy one wrapper or the other and give the woman and say, your child is doing well. She's already in secondary school. Very soon she will enter university. Meanwhile, that child is being used from morning till midnight and early hours again. Take care of the whole children. Will not go to school. Will sleep with carton under the staircase. Eat the remnant food. Being treated again, being dehumanized again, even within the shores of this country. So this internal trafficking is another aspect that poverty, economic hardship, bad governance has fueled it, that people are willing and ready to give out their children with the hope that they will have better opportunities. At the end, they will still be enslaved without getting the opportunity.
Yeah.
Okay, you want to add something?
Yeah, again, it's important we look at it holistically.
Okay.
Number one, most of this modern day slavery is not happening internationally. Mm-hmm. Because internationally they have their laws. There's no way you can escape them for long. They will always cut up with you. And therefore, those cartels that do it, no matter how careful they are somehow caught up. But 98% of them happen locally. 98% of this modern day slavery happens locally. And this is because some of the institutions that have been established by law are not functioning. But for me, it's not the government particularly that will make it function. For instance, in Nigeria, we have what we call private employee agencies. Mm-hmm. And private employee agencies can be expanded into a very big business when it comes to domestic and home care services. Okay? Now, there is this, Nigeria, for instance, have adopted this human rights that is against child labor. That means no child should be sent as a servitude or a housemaid to any home
Well, it still boils down to what you said earlier, awareness.
Awareness.
So those are people, they don't know they're right.
Yeah, secondly, this industry is a very large industry in the US and everywhere in Europe, domestic servants. Okay? They go for training. Like Unizik is setting up home care program where private employee agencies can send people, adults, to come and have some training on how to be domestic servants. And after that, you'll be registered, okay, and open an account for you. Then anybody that wants a domestic servant will call these private employee agencies. They will go to their list and look at the type of domestic servant you are looking for. Is it a nanny, babysitter, for the elderly, for the sick, for gardener, and everything? There are people are registered and have been given training, at least minimum of 6 months training on that. Then there is a contract you will sign for them, and you employ them. Okay? And if government actually enforce that, the law enforcement agencies and other government agencies that are responsible for checking out the human rights of children are checking it out very well. And I encourage people to employ domestic servants through the correct and registered private employee agencies. And there is arrest for those private employee agencies that does it illegally. People will learn their right, because that is how Europe does their own. That is how they started. Once you do any illegality, you'll be arrested and put behind jail. And everybody will begin to learn how to go through the right channel. I think with this, it will reduce this modern day slavery in locally. Because the highest level of modern day slavery is domestic servants and what they pass through. There are other forms, but the highest in percentage is this domestic servant. And from there, if people begin to know their rights, like you say, and this thing will begin to calm down and things will run as it's supposed to be.
Okay, now your suggestion, Dr. Kenna, do you see this as what can happen in our country, Nigeria, putting up this whole outfit together that will be monitoring people going to work as domestic servants in some homes?
Yes, it's a good idea. It's another good one. If people can register as organizations that provide domestic assistance and they are properly supervised, that will go a long way in enhancing the rights of people engaged as domestic assistants. But beyond that, what will compel somebody to condescend to taking up such positions? Government should increase the human development capacity for its citizens. People should acquire education. If you look at it clearly, you discover that at what age bracket would somebody subject himself to be engaged as a domestic assistant?
I want to come in there. You know, some people start it maybe to gather some money for themselves, and you see that some young girls that indulge in it, at the end of the day, you see them training themselves in school.
Yes.
Probably because they don't have enough to go to school first. Yes. So some just start with that to get money that they will use to train themselves or learn skills. At the end of the day, they will leave it.
It's a laudable, I say it's a laudable, laudable idea for people who are conscious of what they are going to do. Mm-hmm. But then there are instances of purely underage people. So that is where our interest should be. Before people should be exposed to such work, they should be of the age of discernment. And age of discernment is 18. So that such persons will know what is going into. But what happens between age 1 and 18 for most people? Go to the rural areas and see the level of poverty. When somebody is not assured of his next meal, yet it doesn't stop him from trying to find consorts in the night with his wife. So you see them, if I cannot have money, God will keep giving me children. Now, when they create problem by so doing, I must applaud what Governor Sam Egwu of Ebonyi State did. When he became governor, he made it a rule that no Ebonyi person should send his child out for house help. She created opportunities for them to go to school, created soft conditions for them to go to school, and most people began to go to school. So the number of Abakaliki people or Ebonyi people who were engaged as domestic servants drastically dropped. In that vein too, he provided opportunities to send those who have secondary school graduates to go to university. Those who have already gone to university were sent overseas for higher degrees.
Okay.
And these are some of the ways you could naturally eliminate poverty. Because everything about domestic help is embedded in poverty.
Okay.
Good, people can do that. In the university, I have instances of people who do that. I encourage them. Create soft conditions for them to work and still go to school. So it is a laudable thing, and I praise the university for tinkering with establishing such an outreach.
Okay. Thank you so much. Just before we go, Hope, just what he said, we need to, address the factors that contribute to this, because from the roots, we need to arrest it from the roots. With that, by doing that, we'll get some results. Now, earlier, you wanted to mention way forward, because we've talked about what is happening within. What about the transatlantic? How do we stop that? How do we curb that?
I'm looking at both transatlantic and the within. Is the same push factor, the same problem, that whether it's pushing them internally or within the African region or across the Atlantic. The main thing is that good governance. Good governance will address a lot of issues. And if a lot of issues is being addressed, I tell you, most people will not want to Japan. Most people will not want to go out of this country. Because even that place will, for those that actually migrated regularly, if things are the way they are supposed to be here, they will not go. So that is one. The second aspect is, I'm happy he's a doctor in history. But what happened? There is no history in our children curriculum anymore. We have to go back. We are looking at the education. It's not just the one-off sensitization we are doing. We are talking of the foundation. Starting from that curriculum, the children, when they are starting to sing all these, A is for apple, B is for bread. Starting from there. The primary, the secondary. As we have English as a compulsory language and mathematics, what happened to our history? Let the history return back, if not as even a core subject. With this, they will tell the children what happened during slave trade. They will tell the children what is happening in human trafficking. And they will see that the same thing that happened that time, and these are ways, so the children will be properly, grounded with the knowledge of, it will help a lot of them to actually take the right decision. We call it informed decision. When they want to migrate, is their human right. They will be able to make an informed decision while migrating.
All right, thank you so much for that. And quickly from you, Dr. Chidozie, make mention of what Anambra University is putting together to see that we help some people. But then again, from your own angle, what do you think are the role of stakeholders? I know we are blaming it on bad governance and all that, but of course, in our country, sometimes if we just wait for the government to do it all alone, we might not really get good results. So all stakeholders, people that are involved, and people that have this burden to see that this thing is being curbed. What do you think that they need to do quickly before we go?
I think it's reciprocal in the sense that the government is doing their own. Like present, we have universal basic education and make it free for every child to go to attend at least from primary school to junior secondary school. Okay, people are aware of that. To what extent do government make sure that the free education is indeed free?
Subsidized education.
Okay, so that is one. Number two, greed, the issue of greed. because Okeke is in US and he sent remittance to his father or his family, I must go. So without knowing whether you have the same qualification with Okeke or the same disposition or the same calling with Okeke. So that greed have to be removed. And then lastly, following the right agency. Like the recent problem that people are suffering in Arab worlds is not caused by government, because there are international private employee agencies that you can go through and go to Arab world to work, and nobody will violate your rights. But people are impatient. People don't want to follow the rules, the right routine of taking things, and they want to cut corners. Once you cut corners, you will be caught in the corner.
All right.
I think once they follow the established agencies that do international employment for people, they will not be caught in those modern day slavery when they travel.
All right. Well, on that note, we want to say a very big thank you to you for joining us on the show and for, enlightening us, because a whole lot of people, they don't really understand what it is that we call the modern day slavery. Thank you so much, Dr. Ikenna Odife, for joining us on the show this morning.
Thank you very much.
And also you, Hope Nkiru Kokoye, thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome.
A very big thank you to you, Dr. Chidozie rather. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
All right, and that's it on the show this morning. My name is Chidimma Oramwa. See you again tomorrow. Bye.